If you want to learn how to store your finished worm compost, then stick around. I'm going to show you how in this video. Let's have a quick look in the bin and have a quicker update on what's going on in here. I was recently making some pear cider, which means I had quite a lot of pulp left over from squeezing the pears, and I've added it in here. We can see quite a bit underneath here, and these guys really like it. The bin's doing quite well. In the last video I talked about how wet this bin was. I ended up drilling some holes. It seems to be making a bit of a difference. I think it'll be a bit easier to manage. The bin's doing nicely, loads and loads of worms, and really couldn't be happier with that. And this definitely is not as soggy as it was in the last video. And the worms seem happy, so that's all good. So we're not harvesting from this bin today. We are going to be harvesting from my other one. We will be harvesting from this bin. We've had a bit of rain recently, which is why there's a load of water here. So let me get rid of that. Really need to come up with a better permanent solution for the top of this. But let me get the cover off and we can have a look inside here. So just a couple of things. I was at Starbucks the other day and asked them to give me their coffee grounds. We drink a lot of coffee anyway, and I put that stuff into the worm bin. But I managed to get about 2 kilograms of coffee grounds, which I added here, and the worms really like used coffee grounds. Loads of baby worms here, so they are quite happy. I put a lot of the pear mash in here as well, and I'm not really seeing a lot of it. I covered it with the coffee grounds to try and absorb some of the moisture, because the coffee grounds are quite dry when you get them from the coffee shop. But it looks like most of the pear mash has been chowed. That was about a week ago that I added all that, but this is looking healthy. We're going to be harvesting from this side. First, I just need to get rid of some of the bigger stuff here. I'm just going to move it across. I haven't been feeding this side at all. We still have the onion from the last time, which has a few worms in it, but it's taking a while to decompose. We're just going to stick that on this side. These eggshells, they take ages to decompose. And there we go. We've got a lot of worms here still, which is not ideal. Some of these worms are going to go into storage with the compost that I'm going to harvest today, but that's not really too much of a problem. I really don't have the time today to actually get these worms out. The thing is, there's still quite a bit of food in here that can be processed by these worms, so it's not all bad. Let's talk about storage of vermicompost. Now, you've got to bear in mind the vermicompost is still alive. There's a lot of organisms in there that you've got to take care of. So if you go and put this in a sealed container, you're going to have some problems. It's going to get smelly, it's going to turn into a big sloppy mess, and it's going to be no good for your garden. So what you need to do is you need to have a solution that is going to allow it to breathe, allow air to get in. Not too much air because you don't want it to dry out, but you want air to get in and you want to be able to keep it alive. Now, like I mentioned, there are still going to be some worms inside the compost that I'm taking out today. And it's not ideal because you want to save all your worms. I have loads of worms, so I'm not too worried about it. There's still food inside the vermicompost, so it won't be too much of a problem because they'll be working through any of the food that hasn't yet been processed into vermicompost. The solution I came up with to store my vermicompost is using a grain bag. So this here is just a bag I bought on eBay. I bought a whole bunch of them actually. It's a pretty sturdy bag. It's what you would get your grains in and things like that. But it is also permeable, which means that the air can get through in and out. It can allow this stuff to breathe. So that's all we're doing. We're going to be taking that vermicompost, we're going to be sticking it into this bag, and then I'll show you what we do with it after that. To help me out, I'm just going to use a bucket, and I'm going to put the sack inside there. It just keeps it nice and open, so it makes this easy to do. So there we go. And all we do is we need to just gather this. It is a shame to be putting the worms in there as well. I do feel a little bit bad for them, but I need to make space to start processing some more food so we get some more vermicompost. This is looking really good. I'm happy with that. It's compacted a little bit down the bottom, but that's not too bad. We're getting quite a bit of compost here. I thought it'd be a bit less than this. So you can see there's things like this. This takes ages to break down. That's just a corn cob. So we'll stick that on that side. Any of the big pieces you want to take out, but don't stress too much, because when this goes into the garden, you're going to be just adding some good stuff to the soil anyway. There we go, we're down to the bottom. I'm not going to dig out every little bit. What I am going to do is I'm going to move some of the old compost over to this side, just to even things out a bit. A bit more compost there. Okay, so let's just move this across. Try and do it without unsettling the worms too much. Try not to hurt them. There we go. Let's just cover them back up, let them settle down again. I'll be putting some more feed in here just to kick them off again. What I'm going to start doing is start feeding on this side, and we'll let this start up again, and we'll end up harvesting this side here after another month or two. So let's take a look at our harvest for today. So if we consider this is a 10-litre bucket, I believe, that means we have about 10 litres of compost. And that is some good stuff. Pay a lot of money for compost like that. I'm sure if you're watching this video anyway, you know the power of vermicompost. It is such a good compost for your garden. But that there would cost you quite a bit of money if you had to buy it from the store. So let me take you over to where I'm actually going to store this, and I'll show you what we do next. So back there is my traditional compost heap, and basically that's where I put my grass and cuttings from the trees, leaves, anything like that. That goes into that pile over there, and that fills up my raised beds, and I use it for my veggie patch and things like that. So you can see that there's quite a lot of compost in here at the moment, and you can see it's steaming. That is looking good. So there's always a place for traditional compost. You aren't going to replace traditional compost with your vermicompost unless you have a massive or quite a few massive worm bins. But the vermicompost really adds a lot of good stuff to your growing medium. So the way I store my vermicompost is stick it in the pile. The reason that I stick this over here is because I keep this pile moist anyway, whether I'm wetting it with tap water or whether it just maintains its own moisture levels. This here is always going to be somewhat moist. So I do also cover it with that tarp at the back there so that it doesn't get too wet when it rains, things like that, especially in the winter. In the summer, I generally leave this open. Now that I'm harvesting the vermicompost, I will probably just put the cover over. And as I keep harvesting vermicompost over the next little while, I'll keep adding it to this bag. I have a few of these bags, like I said, and I'll just fill this up and start a new bag once that one's full. So that's pretty much it. Not a lot to it. Just keep in mind a couple key things. You want to allow your vermicompost to breathe. It is still a living organism, It has a lot of bacteria in there and things like that, and if you don't let it breathe, it's just going to turn into a slimy mess and it's going to start smelling. This does not really smell. The other thing is to make sure you keep it a little bit moist until you use it. If it dries out too much, then you're going to have problems because, again, most of the good stuff that's in there is going to die. So that's all there is to it. Just let it breathe and keep it a bit moist. I'll put links down below for the bags that I used here. They really aren't expensive, and it's the best way I found to be able to store my vermicompost. Thank you for watching. I hope your worms are doing fantastic, and we'll see you again on the next video. Bye bye for now.